Uh, Imogen, can you start off by introducing yourself and your course to us?
Yep. So I'm Imogen, and I'm studying BSc Agriculture at Harper Adams. And I was studying animal management at Otley College, but after work experience at a local farm, I kind of decided that that was what I wanted to do, as opposed to zoology or kind of biology. And then I took a year out to go to Australia, where I worked on a cattle station for a period of time. And that's when I kind of made my mind up that I wanted to go to uni. Yeah.
Okay. So going on to that, so how was the gap year then? So how was the experience on the cattle farm?
Yeah, it was really good. It was tough work and like long days. We'd kind of be up at like 6 a.m. We'd be out like on the horses by about 7:30, and then we wouldn't get back until about 4 or 5 o'clock. So, sometimes it was like 9-10 hours a day out mustering. And like I was in Queensland, and even before it got to their summer, like it was really hot. So it was really difficult to get used to it. But a really, really good experience, and I'm really glad I did it. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of that, I suppose as well as it being quite an endurance side of it, because obviously riding and working both generally require a fair bit of endurance. But how did you find the experience then of working abroad? Obviously, something different.
Yeah, I think I think the main thing I noticed was how big and how rural it was. Like you can go and work on a farm here, and it might be like 20 minutes or half an hour away from a town. But I think my bus journey took me about 15 hours to get to this ranch. And then like they tell you how big it is, and you're like, okay, 300,000 acres, okay. And then you get, and they showed me a map of all of like the different fields, and it was just so vast. And like a few days, like we had to go around driving and checking all the water troughs and the fences. And you wouldn't think that it would take that long, but it took us like the whole day.
All right,
but
completely get that.
Yeah, but I think actually working and living abroad, it was, I don't know, I found it really easy to get used to and kind of adapt. And I think it did help that it's like an English speaking country.
Sure.
I think had I gone to somewhere in Europe, I might have struggled a bit more. Yeah.
So on top of that, so obviously so it was always, was the idea of the placement always supposed to be a year? So the gap year always supposed to be a year, and then to give you an idea of what to do, or was it? Was there a part of you that thought, you know what, I could stay out here more permanently?
Yeah, I did really want to stay out in Australia for longer, but I had already applied for a lambing job that was going to begin in March. And that was kind of before I made up my mind that I wanted to stay there a bit more permanently. So then my plan was to go back after lambing, but obviously I couldn't because of COVID. But I would love to go out there again. I don't think I could live there permanently, but I definitely go out for an extended period of time.
Sure. So from that then, so I suppose different than some of the other students who've had their first year of uni affected by this, or their second year of uni affected, how was working during Corona? Because obviously your lambing job would have coincided with that.
Yeah, I didn't find it too bad. I had accommodation for my lambing job because I was in Sheffield. And I think it was a little bit worrying because it was right as everyone started panic buying, and I had to source all my own food. Like I couldn't rely on mum and dad or like the cooks like we had at the ranch.
Mhm.
And I remember going to Tesco and they didn't have like rice or pasta, and I was kind of like, well, what do I cook? What do I eat?
Mhm.
Um, but it was fine. Like everyone that was working on the farm had to stay in the farm accommodation, so
Mhm.
there was there was very little risk of catching anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was just with that being said, was working on the farm for effectively as a contractor. Did you find it was a good mix, range of ages, range of genders, or was it
Yeah,
mainly men?
so I'd say it was mainly younger people. I think on the
Hmm.
day team there were a lot of university students.
Hmm.
And I was working nights, and there was a girl that was my age, and then a guy that I think was like mid-20s.
Okay.
So it wasn't too bad, but I'd say it was mainly girls,
Hmm.
especially like working days.
Okay, that's a
Yeah,
bit surprising because normally the assumption is animal care skews more towards women and agriculture
agriculture,
skews more towards
men.
men. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that there is still the variation or tendency to go one way or the other. So with that being said, after your lambing job, which finished in
The end of April,
the end of April,
towards the end of April, yeah.
so with that being said, and I assume you managed to get straight home rather than having to stay post.
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah, so got straight home, and then obviously did you did the thought cross your mind of not applying? Obviously, I assume you would have already then the application process would have been already done. But did you ever think maybe I should defer a year for uni or?
Um, Not necessarily defer a year, but thinking, I was considering maybe just withdrawing my application because I just liked working so much. I was like, oh, do I need to go to university? But then I thought it would probably be best if I do, especially because like obviously I don't come from a farming background, so I don't know anybody in the industry.
Hmm.
And coming to university, like, well, I mean, I've not been able to meet that many people because of COVID, but even the people on my course, they know someone who knows someone.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So by that, part of the main appeal of coming to uni, as well as getting that extra bit of knowledge that obviously has now been boosted by your experiences, it's more the focus on the network, the people you meet and who you meet and the types of people you meet that's the
Yeah,
important elements of uni.
yeah.
Okay. So with that element being said then, so September started uni and generally the lockdown was just starting to ease off.
Yeah.
So first step that you normally have with university is your experience of a freshers week. Did you
Yeah.
was it more secure uh,
It
freshers or?
was. Yeah, we went out a couple of times, but most of it was just kind of done like in our halls and with our flatmates.
Mhm.
Um, which was sad. Like we couldn't do all the usual fresher stuff. I don't really know what the usual fresher stuff is. I just suppose going out to like nightclubs and that. And then obviously like we weren't able to have the classic kind of like student nights like people have had before on a Wednesday. Um, but I think because like I'm a bit older than everyone else, I didn't mind that much.
Mhm.
And we were still able to go out at least until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It just meant we had to start earlier.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine that being the case. So there was no freshers challenge, no something, nothing like that that there
No.
normally is. Okay. So at post freshers, there's obviously freshers fair, which is for anyone who doesn't know, normally where you meet different societies. So how were the societies approaching it? Were they just closed,
Um,
or did they?
it was all pretty much like online.
Hmm.
Like we'd get emails and then on like the Facebook pages. Um, but I think because I wasn't able to actually go to a physical thing, I wasn't really that interested, and I've not
Hmm.
actually joined any societies this year. Um,
Okay.
I was going to join rugby, but obviously that's all been cancelled now.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't mind. Like, I am quite busy anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And with that being said, obviously with it being a rural campus, there's generally always stuff going on, and there's normally where people rent tennis courts, normally in the summer in Italy rather than in the winter.
Mm.
Uh, ping pong tables, football, and so on. But do you find up to the new lockdown that they were being used and people were using them, or is it
Yeah, it
kind of
was
been?
very social, like outside and everything, and it still kind of is. Like, I think every Wednesday a lot of people have the day off.
Mhm,
Um, so we all kind of go down to the rugby pitches and like just play a bit of touch, which is quite nice and sociable, although we have been told off a few times
mhm,
for breaking rules.
mhm.
But they, I think like they're being quite good about it, because obviously they realise it's not like any other year, but we still want to have as good an experience as we can, and we still
As you
want
can.
to make friends.
Yeah,
So I do think that, considering like the amount of times we've broken rules, they are being very lenient and kind.
yeah, I get that. Because, like you say, there's different elements that a lot of it's new for all of you, and your uni experience was certainly different than mine at the
Yeah.
same university. And even speaking to other students that have gone through Harper and are a few years down the line in their degree, their their experience of their first year at university was certainly different. So
Mm.
yeah, there's certainly that type of change. So other than that, moving on to, well, first of all, how's the transition from academic animal care to academic agriculture?
Um, the livestock side is fine. Like, it's really easy to get to grasp with. Like, well, at the moment we've been doing kind of like um a lot of like the digestive system in ruminants
Hmm.
and non-ruminants, and like obviously I know a lot of that from like some of the modules at college. It is more so like the arable side of the lessons that are quite tricky to get to grasp with. Like today we were doing, I can't even remember what we were doing. Um, Stuff about like soil nitrogen supplies, and
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I started to understand it, and then we got onto the topic of like farmyard manure and like all the
Hmm.
nitrogen and like the legal requirements, and that just confused me too much.
Yeah.
Um, but we're going over it again in the next lesson, so yeah, I should,
Okay.
I yeah, should get to grasp with it if I keep going over it.
Hmm. And with that being said, then obviously certain elements of that are, I suppose, linked to the animal care or animal management subjects, such as obviously nitrate cycle is generally linked to ecology and pollution.
Yeah.
So, what do you share many of your modules with other courses as a result of that because of some crossover or?
No, although I think like I've heard other people um talking about similar stuff to what we're learning about, but I think so far it's only us ag lot that are like in our classes, if that makes sense.
No, that's makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. I suppose potentially that could always be because of COVID itself. The
Yeah.
big lecture theatres where you would have mixed people together. The university just might have decided we'll keep people separate and
Yeah.
they'll have the individual modules spread over different different days or so. But I
Yeah.
suppose that'll come down to needing to know from the university's point of view rather than needing to know from the your point of view. In terms
Mm.
of the classroom setting, how do you find that your classroom is? I assume you're all socially distanced and so on? What is the experience in the
Yes.
classroom?
It's good. I really like it. They've got it so like along the rows, there's like every third seat, there's a space, and then they've put just like tape on the kind of like bench
Mm-hmm.
for like, so you have one free seat, then two that you're not supposed to sit in, and then like a free seat, then two you're not supposed to sit in, and so on. And like you wear masks in the buildings until you sit down, and then you can take them off for the lectures.
Okay.
And we do also have the opportunity for online learning through Teams, so
Mm-hmm.
that is quite good.
And obviously, from your point of view of that, whereas the current students I'm teaching have had a bit more of a transition with Teams and so on, how did you find starting the university course with leaning more to blended learning or online learning?
I didn't find it that bad actually. It is really handy because I can get it up on my phone and I can either access the PowerPoint that the tutor's going through, like as I'm there writing notes in the lesson, or like if I've got it on my laptop, if I'm doing online learning, I can then have it up there. And there's like a chat as well
Mm-hmm.
that you can ask questions through. And obviously it's really easy to find like all the recorded lectures and files and everything. Because we use Moodle as well, but I find it really hard to navigate that.
Yeah. I can well imagine that being the case. A lot of students do seem to prefer Teams over Moodle, especially our year twos from our year who progressed from year one, who obviously have experienced both, whereas our current batch of students have not had Moodle so much.
Yeah.
But okay, so in terms of, so if your lessons are more smaller, they're more like tutorials rather than physical lectures, do you find what do you find the most enjoyable modules then in your first year? Because what that you've covered so far, if they aren't semesterized?
Definitely the livestock.
Mm-hmm.
I think just because like I know I want to work with animals and that's where all of my experience comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it a lot easier to get to grasp with things. And I find myself kind of more motivated to study it when I know I should be studying like the arable side of stuff because I don't understand it. But yeah.
So with you saying not understanding certain elements of your course, with that, do you feel like you're getting a lot of support from the university in terms of academic support, in terms of access to your lecturers, or?
Yeah, I mean, so we just had like one of our crop lessons and we were doing that whole nitrogen and potassium and manure that stuff. And my lecturer does know that like I don't have experience, and like me and another girl, we were helping each other out and we were struggling a bit, and he did come over and help us,
Mm-hmm.
which was really nice of him. So yeah, I do think there is definitely a lot of support for people that are struggling and don't really understand.
Okay. And with that being said, if you were speaking to your pre-university self, what would you say is the main lesson that you've taken, which has been the biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you faced?
I thought the biggest challenge would be not coming from a farming background and not having any experience. But there are people that have even less experience than me, and kind of even the people that do come from their family farms, they're not kind of like snobby and stuck up like I thought they would be, and like
Mm-hmm.
they will help you out and they're really nice about it. So yeah, I think if anyone is considering making that transition but they're worried about kind of not being from a farming background or not having that opportunity, like just don't worry about it because there are people in the same boat as you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's a girl on my course that did engineering last year, and now she's doing agriculture. So that's like a massive change.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay. And I suppose with some people, I'm not saying all, but some people will take a part-time jobs whilst they're at uni just to cover their living expenses.
Yeah.
If you have done that, or if you've considered doing that, have you found there's been opportunities around to do that? And like the student ambassadors, I imagine aren't really a thing at the moment because of.
I haven't got a job this year, just because, well, I have a lot of money saved up from working over the summer, and I am really lucky that my parents are able to help me out with my accommodation. And I think, I don't know if I'll get a job like next year or if I'll just do all of my work in the summer and save up. Like, because I would like to work the harvest next summer.
Sure.
And I know you can get a fair bit of money from, like, obviously it's long hours and hard work. But I do really want to do that because I think it would be a great experience. Yeah.
And are you considering then? Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just saying I like having the evenings and weekends free to socialize and do like extra work, not extra work, but like do all my reading and everything. I don't want to have to worry about a job.
All right, that's understandable. Are you thinking of doing lambing again then in March, all being well?
Yeah, I'm actually going to France at the beginning of January to do lambing for 2 weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that. I go over on the 3rd of January, I think. So, and I'm using that for part of my work experience this year. And I'm really excited because I really want to get an idea of like how it's done in different parts of the world.
Okay.
Because I just think it's kind of really interesting to see how different countries do it and different cultures maybe. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
I get that. So with all that, and obviously, hopefully, COVID doesn't affect your work experience plans.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But in terms of that, obviously, once you transition into your second year, that'll be whether or not they've spoke to you at all about this year. But obviously, in your second year, you tend to think about placement years. So
yeah,
did that come into any form of consideration when you're thinking? Obviously, all of Harper's courses are placement year or sandwich courses.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you didn't want to go to a uni with a placement year after already doing a gap year before?
I did, because it would kind of push my graduation back another year, and I didn't want that. But I think it will really be good for me to get a year of working in the industry and get more contacts for when I graduate. Because otherwise I could graduate with no contacts and I'd be stuck.
Sure.
But no, I think this will be really good for me.
So with you saying that you've already got experience now with cattle, I assume they were probably beef cattle in Australia, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Then you've got experience with lambing, so sheep. So from that transition, are you trying to move through the proteins in terms of moving to poultry and pigs as well, or are you thinking more gaining experience with the two species that you've already worked with? What are your thoughts of that?
I would like to get a general idea of working with all kinds of livestock. Like, I would like to do a bit of pig work. Poultry I'm not so fussed about, but I do think it would be a good experience. Like, I remember you saying like it was a good experience, and a lot of our lecturers have said it's like they've done it and it's been a really good experience. But I think what I want to do is get an idea of each kind of livestock and then focus on one and get more experienced in that.
No, I certainly, like you say, I certainly am an advocate for the poultry industry because of the experience and opportunity that it yielded for me. But like you say, you do generally end up focusing on one because it's generally you only have the time and energy to exhaust on
Yeah.
one set of resources. But with that being said, some of the farms that you might have worked at, I'm not sure if this is the case, but have you found that the farms you worked at are one source of revenue and one source of income, or are they diversifying now slightly because of the trade-offs between different
Yeah.
markets effectively?
Well, the farm I was working at for lambing, that was like a 3,000 head herd, flock even. But that was just like a hobby for the farmer. He actually owned like a company that kind of deals with carcasses and ships them out to China for like bone meal.
Okay.
Like a lot of zoos and aquariums send their dead animals there. So they get most of their money from that. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and like you say, that's certainly a different. Normally, when you have that conversation, it's normally, oh yeah, they've got a few hectares of crops, but
Yeah.
I suppose having export business, someone's got to do it. So
Yeah.
I'd imagine it's interesting to hear about, even if you weren't working directly with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was.
So, in terms of obviously, if scholarships are a very important part, and as you've already said, travel and experiencing a variety of different animals and different farming systems is obviously what you're passionate about. So, with that being said, do you find that your experiences with your course have given you more of a greater understanding of the animal itself, in terms of obviously animal management looks at maintaining the animal's health and so on, only touches lightly on farming. Do you find it's made you more aware and given you more of an understanding, or do you feel like you pivoted into something completely different than what you thought?
No, I think it is pretty much what I thought it would be. It has definitely enabled me to develop like what I already knew from college. And I do think that college was like a good starting block. Yeah, definitely kind of like delving more into a lot more depth than at college. So
No, I get that. So, with that being said, have you even remotely thought about the dissertation at the end of your course? Have you given any thought to what topic you'd be
um
getting into?
I was thinking about maybe seeing if I could do something about different kind of farming systems and styles, for want of a better word, around the world. But I don't quite know how I could put that into a dissertation, so I might have to think about something different.
Okay. So, with dissertations, obviously, big topic. What did you do your specialist project on? Refresh my memory of what the topic was, if you can remember yourself.
I think it was like where like the effects humans have on global wildlife populations.
So a completely different pivot then from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking I could do something maybe about global effects that agriculture has. But I'm not sure how I can make a whole dissertation out of that.
Sure. That's obviously a big topic at the moment, with rightly or wrongly, depending on the different documentaries that are going around at the moment. Okay. So I suppose as well, after, I know dissertation must feel like miles away because you're in your first year of a 4-year course, but have you given any further thought then to what you do after your dissertation, after your final year?
I was thinking a little while ago that I think because I do really want to have my own small holding,
Hmm.
I could find a job that would allow me to like still have the time to do that. I was thinking maybe I could go into teaching or something, a
Hmm.
bit like at an agricultural college. But then I don't know if I want to just be at a college for like, I don't know, 30 odd years.
Hmm.
But then I don't just want to do a degree and then work on a farm, because
Sure.
I don't need to spend 4 years at uni to do that.
Yeah, I get all that. So I suppose the one that tends to be in between that, I suppose, then is your well, there's two ones that are in between, which I'm not sure if they've come up in your thoughts, are graduate schemes at different agricultural companies. I know
Mm.
definitely on the crops you have Agri and Agrovista, with with your main protein producers. You've got Devonish for pigs. Tesco itself has a pretty good graduate scheme for agriculture, as does
Yeah.
Aldi and so on. So there are, as you say, slightly different pivots, but again, it depends what type of role you see yourself in. If you're wanting to be out on the farm a lot, then generally
Yeah.
it's getting the balance between the office and the office experience versus
Yeah.
your practical experience. Which one's the right balance? But like you say, the only thing that I know from different friends is they struggle to balance pigs on the side of their work with pigs because, and same with poultry because of the whole biosecurity,
Biosecurity, yeah.
which obviously sheep and cattle tend to be a bit more relaxed. Uh,
Yeah.
so long as it's not something to do with foot and mouth, the touch wood never happens again in this country. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'd be the only thing that would have a severe
Yeah.
impact on that type of thing. But yeah, so I suppose, have you thought at any point about research as your other points? So going further with academia, or is BSc definitely where you see has been the right amount of
Um,
work?
I don't think not that I'm not smart enough, but I don't think I'm motivated enough to kind of
Mhm.
further it and go into research. I'm definitely more of like a practical person.
Sure.
I couldn't be stuck in a lab, or obviously not necessarily a lab, but you know what I mean.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
you don't see yourself working for a company like Genus, or where you have AI companies?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
just like you say, there's plenty of different things out there. And I suppose the other thing that will possibly be a thought for others who potentially go down the same route that you have, would you ever see yourself going back into more the animal side? Do you think you could ever see yourself pivoting back into zoo work? Or obviously some of the skills that you have mastered from
Yeah.
driving tractors, forklifts, ATVs, those type of elements that might come because of placements and work experiences, you could apply them into a farm as well. Farm to
Yeah.
a zoo.
I think the most I would do, like in terms of going back to the animal side of things, would probably be going to do like game work in South Africa or something.
Hmm.
So that is still something I'd really like to do.
Okay.
Work on a reserve or something.
Hmm.
Um, like the whole conservation side of things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't think I could work in a zoo or like with small animals. Yeah, I like being outside and
Hmm.
yeah.
But I suppose I didn't put you off equine then.
No.
No.
No, I think I used to want to study equine, but I just remember my mum always telling me like it's it's very limited to what you can do.
Hmm.
Um, like if you do equine, you're kind of stuck with horses.
Mhm.
And at least with agriculture, yes, it's more limited than animal management, but there's still a lot I can do with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you say, I suppose it's limited and it's not in some ways, because as you say, you've got limited of the types of animals that people generally work or farm, but then there's tends to be more businesses out there which are doing that. And
Yeah.
obviously, as you said, if you set up your own small holding, uh, potentially working for yourself is, I'm not saying easier, because I don't want anyone who watches this to think that growing your own crops or animals is an easy job. And
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't say, if I speak to a lot of my friends who would say it has its financial ups, but it also certainly has the financial downs as well. So bring it on to that though. You have your own small flock of sheep. So
Yes.
how first of all, how did you come across the sheep, and what were your thoughts with that then?
So it's a funny story actually. Sorry. So
No, no.
when I was lambing in Sheffield, obviously it was kind of like the first time where it was like a serious operation as opposed to lambing at college. Um, um, but so on my first night, this lamb was born, and she was quite mentally deranged, and they were like, "Oh, we'll put her down. You know, she's not worth keeping." And I was like, "No, I'll take her home. Like, I'll look after her and everything." So like, okay, fine, but you have to promise you'll take her home. So I texted mum like that morning, and I was like, "Oh, there's this lamb. I said I'll take her home, blah blah blah." And mum didn't really believe me until a few days before I left, and I was like, "I need like the landowner's CPH number because I'm bringing a lamb home." My
Mm,
mum was just kind of like, "What?" And she was like, "But you're going to uni and everything." I was like, I know, but I'll figure it out." So I
mm,
had this lamb that was with another, like the landowner's flock of sheep, but
mhm,
obviously they were all being sent off for slaughter, so I had to buy a couple more sheep,
mhm.
which I got in August. And now my parents love them, and they're really getting into it, which is good.
Okay, so were the other two sheep that you have, were they from the same farm, or different, just different
No,
sheep?
just completely different. They came from, I can't actually remember. It was close to Otley.
Mhm,
Um, from this girl that I found it on Facebook actually. On like, I think it was Ladies Who Lamb.
mhm,
I just put out some like posts. I put one on like Suffolk Small Holding as well, I think.
mhm.
Um, just asking if anyone's got any lambs. Um, so I went, picked a couple out, and then yeah,
Okay. And with that be so all female, mix of both, castrated?
yeah, all female, but I'm going to breed the two, like the twins next year.
Uh-huh.
But the one I got from Sheffield, she's just a pet. She probably won't do very well lambing. Um,
Yeah, I can completely understand that. So
yeah,
effectively, small start of a commercial flock, using the two that you've got for it, and one pet to go with your small
yeah,
holding. So uh, yeah, that's a different way of doing that. And obviously, from the point of view of being a young person starting off in the field, how have you found the owning your own livestock? Because if you have horses, if you have a dog, that's obviously treated as very different than owning stock.
yeah. I really like it. It's definitely given me more of a sense of responsibility and kind of independency from my parents, because obviously like with the horses and the dog, they know exactly what they're doing.
Hmm.
But with the sheep, it's still a learning curve for me, but I'm the one that knows more, so they kind of have to listen to me when it comes to like, oh, what do we do with the sheep? And yeah, I do like it, and it does kind of, it sounds really cheesy, like it gives you a sense of like being needed. And yeah, it's really good.
So I suppose with that being said then, are you entirely funding the sheep yourself, or is that, are you being helped out?
Mum and Dad did help me out with a few of the fencing supplies, but that was also kind of part of my birthday present because I got them around my birthday. But I've got money in savings that I pay for the field with.
Okay.
So yeah, it's mostly me. Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Just
so
the labour of mum and dad.
So that, I was just going to say, so in terms of looking after them at the moment, it's mum and dad looking after them while you're at uni. And then when you go back, you look after them and so on.
Yeah. But mum and dad don't mind because they're right next to the horses. So it's not an extra journey or anything.
Sure. And I suppose maintenance of sheep, other than having them sheared, that's are you doing anything? Are you doing all that yourself, or the?
Yeah. So I wormed them, and I wormed my pet one and vaccinated her, and sorted her out for fly strike. And then I've got a pair of hand shears, and I would like to shear them myself next year. Give it a go. But yeah,
because that in itself is there's people who spend vast majority of their working life just doing different shearing, and I know there's a few people who travel around and just, I've even seen it, I'm sure as you have, at the Norfolk and Suffolk show, where there are people who do it competitively, which is a different sight to see than having to go yourself. But so start of a little enterprise and growing in academia as well. So that, in terms of, is there anything else that you're thinking of doing in terms of, are you thinking of taking on more stock, or are you keeping it at that three's about the limit at the moment?
I think it all depends on what kind of land I can get next year. Because I can't keep affording to pay the rates that the landowner wants.
Sure.
I do want to breed next year, and I'll probably sell those lambs, but then I might use any money I get from those to buy some more stock. Yeah, and just take it slowly. Like, I've got ages, so yeah.
I get that. Well, thank you very much, Imogen, for speaking to us, and hopefully, I'm sure the students will find a great insight into agriculture. Thank you.